She looked her husband dead in the eyes and said she was going to sacrifice for their future, only to spend the night with another man. What she called ambition, he called betrayal. But he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just smiled and quietly set a plan in motion that would shatter everything she thought she knew. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The steam from the kitchen pot rose in gentle spirals, but the tension in the room was thick and suffocating. Aaron Whitaker sat at the dinner table, his hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug of black coffee, eyes fixed on his wife as she glided across the kitchen in her silk blouse and red lipstick, too dressed up for a Thursday night. "Why are you this dressed?" he asked softly, voice calm but watchful. Claire didn't pause. She straightened the hem of her blouse in the mirror by the fridge and smoothed back a strand of golden hair. "There's a late networking dinner," she said, tone light, almost rehearsed. "You know how things are picking up at the firm. If I land this campaign, we could finally move into the Ridgeview house you liked." Aaron tilted his head. "And you have to go alone?" She finally turned to face him, cool eyes, perfectly composed. "Yes, because this client isn't a group kind of man. He's particular, private." Aaron didn't say anything, just sipped the coffee. Let the silence ask the questions he wouldn't voice. Claire rolled her eyes. "Aaron, this isn't what you're thinking. It's strategy, politics, influence." She leaned over, placing her manicured hand over his. "I'm doing this for both of us." She left a soft kiss on his cheek. It was the same kind of kiss she used to give him before leaving for work 5 years ago, back when love was effortless. Tonight, it tasted different, like manipulation. 30 minutes later, he stood at the living room window and watched the black sedan pull away from their driveway. She never looked back. She didn't see the tear escape down his cheek, and he didn't see her phone screen light up with the name Julian Pierce. Julian, CEO of Cypher Media, multimillionaire, known in marketing circles not just for his money, but for his reputation. Claire hadn't told Aaron that Julian had offered her more than a campaign. He'd offered her a shortcut to the top. All she had to do was play along. Just once, maybe twice. What she didn't know was that Aaron had already met Julian 2 years ago at a tech summit in Seattle. Julian had offered Aaron a job, VP of Analytics, after a conversation about ethical marketing and transparency. Aaron turned it down because he wanted to build his own startup. He never forgot the man's name. Aaron's world. Aaron wasn't some soft, dependent husband. Before Claire's job took off, he was the breadwinner. He ran a small but promising AI startup called MindVerge. He coded day and night, fought for seed funding, and poured his life into it. When Claire got her offer at Weldon and Tate, she'd begged him to just take it easy for a while. He did. But easy turned into forgotten. Claire became the star, the one with invites, events, media coverage. She started calling their house her home. She started saying things like, "If you could just contribute a little more," even though Aaron was the one cooking dinner, keeping the lights on, fixing broken cabinets, and staying up all night debugging code no one saw. He loved her, but slowly he felt erased. Until tonight, Claire's night. Julian's penthouse overlooked the city skyline like a throne room above the peasants. Claire stood on the balcony, champagne in hand, watching the city lights blur. She was nervous, but she had come too far to back out. "Relax," Julian said from behind, voice low. "You've earned this opportunity. You're smart, ambitious, willing to go the extra mile." Claire forced a smile. "I just want to make sure my name's on the next global campaign." Julian took a step closer. "After tonight, it will be." And so, she stayed. Aaron's awakening. Back home, Aaron didn't sleep. He sat on the couch, opened his laptop, and typed 2 words into the search bar: Julian Pierce. As page after page unfolded, something in Aaron hardened. This wasn't just betrayal. This was humiliation. And something inside him, the old fire from his startup days, roared back to life. Aaron began drafting an email. Then 2. Then 10. Then he pulled out a dusty manila folder from his office drawer. The one labeled MindVerge, Dormant Assets. Because what Claire didn't know was that her underachieving husband had quietly retained proprietary rights to a software algorithm that Julian's company just happened to be acquiring under the table next quarter. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Aaron whispered to himself as he typed a final line into his spreadsheet. Let's see how far you're willing to climb once I pull the ladder. Morning light flooded the kitchen as Claire walked in, heels in one hand, phone in the other, sunglasses hiding the lack of sleep and conscience on her face. Aaron was at the stove making eggs, calm, steady, as if nothing had happened. Didn't expect you to be up, she said, voice tight, rehearsed. He didn't turn. I couldn't sleep. A flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt. No. She brushed it off. I sealed the deal, she said, sliding onto the bar stool. He's given me the full campaign. I'm going to be leading the East Coast launch. Congrats, Aaron said, placing a plate in front of her without meeting her eyes. She stared at him. That's it. Aaron finally looked up. What do you want me to say, Claire? That I'm proud of what you had to do. Her forward paused midair. You don't understand. This is how the game works. Men do it all the time. Sacrifices have to be made. Not at the cost of dignity, he said quietly. Claire stood, shoving the plate aside. I didn't cheat. I invested. There's a difference. Aaron said nothing, but his silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. Aaron's plan. Over the next few weeks, Aaron lived a double life. By day, he played the same role, supportive husband, silent observer. But by night, he was building. He rebuilt Mindverge from the ground up, using his old connections in tech and ethics circles. He contacted Silas Rook, a former mentor now working at RIVR, a watchdog group investigating corporate misconduct. Julian's company, Cypher Media, was already under quiet scrutiny for privacy breaches. Claire had no idea, but Aaron did. One night, after Claire left for another strategy dinner, Aaron uploaded a document. It contained emails, server logs, and predictive model traces showing that Julian had been mining consumer data illegally using a skinned-down version of Aaron's original AI design. It was the kill shot, Claire's ascent. Meanwhile, Claire was thriving, or so it seemed. She was in magazines, featured on women in media panels. Her Instagram followers exploded. She started referring to Aaron as the artist, saying he liked to stay out of the spotlight. She decorated the house in her image, painted the walls, changed the furniture. She even began talking about freezing their joint accounts for financial clarity. But something kept nagging her. Aaron wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. He was calm. Too calm. Why aren't you fighting me? She asked one night over wine. Why should I fight someone who already made their choice? He replied. She hated that. She wanted rage. She wanted emotion. Instead, she got a ghost. Aaron's move. 3 months after Claire's night with Julian, news broke. Federal ethics investigation opens into Cypher Media AI breach. Claire's face went pale as she watched Julian's mugshot flash across the news. What the hell? She muttered. Her phone lit up with calls from colleagues, lawyers, press. The campaign was pulled overnight. Her job at Weldon and Tate was suspended pending investigation. She rushed home to find Aaron packing a suitcase. Did you know about this? She demanded. He zipped the case, turned to her, and said, You once told me this was all for US. But everything you did was only for you. He walked to the door. You ruined me, she whispered. No, he said, pausing. You ruined yourself. I just gave you a mirror. Claire's fall. Over the next few weeks, Claire lost everything. Weldon and Tate cut ties. Julian was indicted. Her name, once on every digital billboard, was now being wiped from portfolios. She tried to contact Aaron, but he was gone. No address. No trace. He'd left the state, started Mindverge anew, this time with full control and a fresh investor backing from a global ethical tech firm. Claire stood in front of the mirror, wearing the same red lipstick she had the night everything changed. But her reflection now looked tired, haunted. She whispered to herself, I did it for us, but no one was there to listen anymore. Aaron didn't leave a note. He left silence, a loud, echoing absence that filled every corner of the house Claire once remodeled to erase his presence. Now it felt like a mausoleum. His books were gone, his tools. Even the photo frame by her bedside, the one from their honeymoon in Charleston, was missing. She hadn't noticed when he took it. She hadn't noticed a lot of things, like how detached he had become, how quietly he watched her lie, how little he said when she came home smelling of expensive cologne and guilt. She thought she'd won. She thought sacrificing one night would give her the life she'd always dreamed of. But that night had cost her something she didn't fully grasp until it was already gone: a good man's loyalty. Weeks passed. Her phone, once buzzing with invites and media calls, now sat silent. Her inbox was a graveyard of retractions, cancellations, and polite apologies laced with pity. The PR firm she hired stopped replying. Weldon and Tate released a cold, precise statement distancing themselves from both her and the Julian Pierce scandal. Claire tried to do damage control. She called in favors. Even tried to sell a story to the press claiming she was manipulated by Julian. No one cared. She tried calling Aaron again. Straight to voicemail. What haunted her most was not that he was angry, but that he had become indifferent. Indifference was worse than hate. At least hate meant he still felt something. But this, it was as though she never existed in his world at all. One night, sitting in the living room with nothing but the soft buzz of the fridge in the background, she finally opened the USB drive he'd left on the coffee table before disappearing. It was labeled simply, Truth. Inside her files, spreadsheets, documents, a full dossier. It showed Julian's usage of Aaron's proprietary algorithm, illegally integrated into Cypher's platform without licensing. It had timestamps, server logs, private email conversations between executives. Claire's hand trembled. Aaron had built the noose and handed it to the government, and he let her walk right into it. She wasn't collateral damage. She was complicit. She realized then that Aaron never yelled. He never begged. He just let her walk off the cliff and made sure the fall was loud. In another city, Aaron sat across from a boardroom table, his sleeves rolled up, whiteboard behind him filled with data flows and projections. He looked alive again, his voice filled with authority, his ideas sharp, his team listening to every word. They didn't see the scars under his sleeve. They didn't know the nights he stared at a blank wall wondering how the woman he built his life with could trade love for leverage. They didn't see the man who used to bring her coffee every morning just to hear her laugh. Now, he had purpose again, but he hadn't forgotten. Back at her end, Claire pawned her jewelry to pay her mortgage. She applied for PR gigs and was met with polite no's. Her name was toxic in every major firm. Her reputation burnt beyond repair. She moved into a smaller apartment on the edge of town. Quiet. Forgotten. She'd scroll through social media and see Aaron sometimes, featured in articles on ethical tech, smiling beside bright young engineers, speaking on conference stages she once dreamed of standing on. She sent one last message. Just a single line. I never thought you'd leave me like that. No reply. But a week later, a letter came. Typed. Neat. Clean. You didn't lose me, Claire. You gave me away, and I just accepted what you handed over. She read it 5 times. Then she cried for the first time in months. Not because she wanted him back, but because she knew she never deserved him in the first place. Claire didn't step outside for days after reading that letter. She kept replaying those words in her head. You gave me away. They wrapped around her throat like a noose, tightening every time she remembered how confident she was that night she walked out of their home and into Julian Pierce's apartment. It had felt powerful then, like a career move, like control. But in the silence of her dim apartment, power felt like a ghost that mocked her. The friends who once laughed with her at rooftop parties vanished. The colleagues who praised her boldness blocked her calls. The world didn't just move on, it shut her out. And Aaron was now everything she thought she'd become. He was interviewed by Forbes last month. She watched it on a cracked tablet screen in bed, surrounded by boxes she still hadn't unpacked. He looked different, firmer, more composed. His smile didn't carry bitterness. It carried closure. Claire closed the tablet and cried, not out of regret for her ambition, but for underestimating the man who once believed she could have it all without selling her soul. Aaron, on the other hand, had found a new rhythm. He'd leased a quiet loft near the coast, where mornings smelled of salt water and fresh code. Mindverge had become a rising name in the privacy tech world, and after signing a major deal with 3 educational platforms, it gained traction with mainstream media. But success didn't erase pain. Some nights, he would lie awake and replay the years they spent building a life together. The road trips, the late-night ramen, the first time she wore his hoodie and never gave it back. He missed her, not the version who bartered love for leverage, but the woman he once danced with barefoot in the living room when they couldn't afford furniture. Still, he refused to let nostalgia trap him. Pain was just proof he survived it. At a tech gala in San Francisco, Aaron met someone new. Her name was Lydia, an art director who'd been through her own wreckage. They spoke over whiskey sours, traded scars, and for the first time in a long time, Aaron laughed without pretending. Meanwhile, Claire tried to claw her way back. She started a blog, hoping her experience would attract followers. She framed herself as a cautionary tale, not a villain. But the internet is rarely kind to those who burned bridges and expects sympathy when the smoke clears. Even Julian refused to take her calls. From prison, he released a statement denying any personal involvement with Claire, calling her an unfortunate pawn. She was alone, utterly and completely. And yet, one night, a letter came to Aaron's new office. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. Inside, a single page. I understand now, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, you were the only thing in my life that was ever real. I just didn't know how to hold on to something good. I thought I had to trade you for greatness. But I had it backward. He folded the paper and placed it in the bottom drawer of his desk. He didn't reply. Some chapters don't deserve sequels. The seasons changed. Aaron's life grew fuller, richer, but simpler. His days began before sunrise, filled with product meetings, investor calls, and long coding sessions where silence was a sanctuary. Lydia was still around, steady, quiet, never intrusive. She never asked about the past, though Aaron suspected she knew. He appreciated that. With her, he didn't need to explain the silence between conversations. She filled it with presence, not pressure. But sometimes, in moments between thoughts, Claire's name would flicker through his mind like a distant storm warning. He didn't chase the memory. He let it pass like wind against a closed window. In another part of the city, Claire sat behind a cheap desk in a co-working space she could barely afford. She had picked up contract work writing product blurbs and ghostwriting pitch decks. She signed her name to nothing. The irony of being a silent contributor, after years of screaming for recognition, wasn't lost on her. She avoided mirrors now, not because she hated her reflection, but because she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Gone were the designer heels, the sharp blazers, the flawless press photos. Now it was all bargain scars and tired eyes. But there was one thing she hadn't lost, her memory. And in that memory lived 100 moments with Aaron she had once taken for granted. The way he made her tea just how she liked it without asking. The way he could fix anything, even her worst moods. How he once said, "It's not your ambition I fear. It's what you'll leave behind to feed it." She had scoffed then. Now, she knew what he meant. One cold January morning, Claire received an invite to a mid-tier marketing event in Portland. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. She packed a modest bag, took a bus instead of a flight, and stayed in a rented room above a cafe. She practiced her pitch in the mirror. She still had her voice. That, at least, no one had taken from her. The event was smaller than she expected. Folding chairs, plastic name badges. But at the center of the stage, on the list of keynote guests, was a name she hadn't seen on paper in months. Aaron Whitaker, founder, MindVerge. Claire's breath caught. She hadn't known he would be there. She debated leaving. She didn't. When he walked onto the stage, the room fell quiet. He spoke with ease, calm, assured. His words weren't flashy, but they were honest, and the audience leaned into every sentence. She watched, clutching her notepad like a shield. After the talk, as the crowd gathered around him, Claire stood in the corner, unnoticed, until he looked up and saw her. Their eyes met across the room, and in that split second, something passed between them. Unspoken, sharp, and deep. She looked away first. Aaron didn't approach her. He didn't wave. He simply turned back to the man speaking beside him and nodded. Later that night, Claire sat alone in the cafe below her rental. She stirred her lukewarm coffee, trying not to cry into it. She knew now, this wasn't a story where she came back and won him over. This wasn't redemption. This was the part where she lived with her choices. The next morning, Aaron received an anonymous donation receipt in his email. It was a modest amount, $5,000, to a Women in Tech scholarship fund he had helped create months ago. The name on the donation form? Anonymous. But the note attached read, "For the girls still climbing, without compromise." He knew, and he smiled, not out of joy, but something close to closure.